It's funny how life can change in the blink of an eye, how a single moment can send everything spiraling into chaos. I've always been the type of person who kept my head down, did my job, and tried to avoid unnecessary drama. But I guess I should have known better when my wife, Kara, handed me that invitation. I wasn't sure how it all started. It was like one minute everything was fine, and the next, things fell off. But it wasn't until I opened that envelope that I realized just how off everything really was. We weren't in a bad place, not exactly. There were no major fights or unresolved issues between us. But over the last few months, I noticed Kara had become more distant. She wasn't as affectionate as she used to be, and the casual conversations we once had turned into awkward silences. I thought it was just the stress of her job, the endless meetings, and the late nights. She was an up-and-coming star at her company, after all. Then, one evening, she handed me the invite. "I'm going to a work event next week," she said, her voice almost too casual. "I'd love it if you could come with me." I looked at the invitation in my hands. The fancy design, the expensive logo at the top. It was one of those exclusive corporate events that I knew nothing about. I had no idea what kind of people Kara worked with, but she'd mentioned the event before. She had sounded so enthusiastic about it. "Sure," I said, not thinking too much about it. "I'll go. But you know I'm not a fan of those corporate things." She smiled, but there was something in her eyes that made me pause. "I really want you to be there," she added. "It's important. It's not just about work. It's about us." Something about her tone didn't sit right with me. It was too insistent, too rehearsed. But I didn't question it. I wasn't the type to make a fuss. So, I agreed to go. The night of the event arrived, and I found myself standing in a lavish ballroom, surrounded by people I didn't recognize. The room was filled with laughter and clinking glasses, the atmosphere more like a high-end cocktail party than anything I was accustomed to. Kara looked stunning, of course. She had this way of commanding attention without trying, and as I stood beside her, I realized just how out of place I felt. Kara had already gone off to mingle, leaving me to my own devices. I didn't mind at first. I wasn't one for small talk, especially with people I didn't know. But as the evening went on, I started to notice things. I saw her laughing with a man, someone I hadn't met before. He had a presence about him, a confidence that made people gravitate toward him. His name was Richard, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. But there was something about him that rubbed me the wrong way. It wasn't just the way he dressed, or how well he spoke. It was the way he looked at Kara. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but I saw it. The way his eyes lingered just a second too long when she spoke. The way he'd touch her arm, just a little too casually. At first, I told myself I was overthinking it. I mean, what was I supposed to think? It's a work event, people are friendly. But as the night went on, those small gestures started to pile up. I could feel the unease building in my stomach. I tried to shake it off, but it was there, creeping into my thoughts. Was I being paranoid? Or was something really going on? As I stood there, watching them from across the room, Kara caught my eye. She smiled and waved, but there was something different about her smile. It didn't quite reach her eyes. And in that moment, something clicked inside me. There was more to this than just a corporate event. There was something happening here, something that I wasn't seeing. I decided to approach them, trying to act casual. "Hey, Kara," I said, walking over to them with a smile that didn't quite match my thoughts. "Richard, right? I don't think we've met." Richard turned to face me, flashing a smile that felt a little too rehearsed. "Yeah, we've met before, but not properly. Good to finally meet you, Nathan." Kara didn't seem fazed. She smiled and nodded, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. "Nathan, I'm glad you could make it. I hope you're having a good time." I nodded, but my gaze lingered on Richard. He was standing too close to her, too comfortably. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more going on beneath the surface. The conversation drifted, but I couldn't focus on what they were saying. All I could think about was the connection between them. And it was then that I realized I wasn't the only one who noticed. I wasn't the only one who saw how Richard looked at Kara. And I certainly wasn't the only one who felt the tension in the air. It was at that exact moment when everything started to unravel. I wasn't sure what I had expected when I agreed to come tonight, but it certainly wasn't this. As the evening wore on, I noticed Richard's subtle gestures more and more. The way he stood a little too close to Kara when he spoke to her. The way he'd laugh a little too loudly at her jokes. And I knew what this was. This wasn't just a work event. This wasn't just friendly banter. Richard wasn't just some colleague. He wasn't just a nice guy. And that's when it hit me. Kara wasn't just my wife anymore. But what was I going to do about it? I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, like the floor beneath me had suddenly become unstable, and I was teetering on the edge of something I didn't understand. As I stood there, next to Kara and Richard, I watched them talk, laugh, and interact as if nothing was wrong. But everything felt wrong. I felt like an outsider in my own life. Richard leaned in a little too close to Kara as he whispered something in her ear. The smile she gave him wasn't the kind of smile a married woman should give another man. It was the smile of someone who had a secret, a smile that was just for him. I felt the knot in my stomach tighten as the jealousy I had been trying to suppress boiled over. "Are you okay?" Kara suddenly asked, pulling me out of my thoughts. I snapped back to reality, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just trying to get used to the crowd here." She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. She glanced back at Richard for a second before turning her attention to me. "Nathan, don't be weird," she said softly. "Just have fun. Relax." I couldn't let it go. I had to know. "How long have you two known each other?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Kara's smile faltered for a moment, but Richard quickly stepped in. "Oh, we've been working together for a few months now. But let's not make this all about work, huh?" He laughed, but it didn't sound genuine. I could see right through him. He wasn't just some coworker. I could tell. There was a tension in the way he spoke to Kara, in the way he was standing too close, the way his hand casually brushed against hers as they exchanged a laugh. It was subtle, but it was there, like an unspoken language that only they understood. And then, without warning, Kara's hand slipped into Richard's arm, and the warmth I once felt in her touch seemed to dissipate. The chill that had been creeping in my chest now spread to my limbs. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Was she really doing this? In front of me? My mind raced with questions. Was this something that had been going on for a while? Had I missed the signs? How much was I willing to ignore for the sake of peace? I had always been the kind of person who believed in loyalty and trust, but now, standing here in the midst of all this, I felt the foundation of my beliefs beginning to crumble. I needed to get away from them, to clear my head. "I'm going to grab a drink," I muttered, turning away before either of them could say anything. As I walked toward the bar, my mind was spinning. I grabbed a glass of wine, then another, and then another. Anything to numb the feeling in my chest. I needed to escape this situation, but I didn't know how. Every glance I threw toward them made my blood boil. They were standing too close, talking too easily, laughing too much. It was as if they were the only two people in the room. And then, as I stood there, nursing my third drink, it hit me. I was being replaced. Not just in the moment, but in her life. Kara, my wife, was slipping away from me, and I had no idea how to stop it. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe this was just her being friendly. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just harmless flirting. There was a connection between them, and I wasn't part of it. I looked around the room, trying to focus on anything but the pain in my chest. But my eyes kept returning to them. Kara was now leaning against the wall with Richard, laughing at something he'd said. Her body turned toward him in a way that felt too intimate. I couldn't watch anymore. I couldn't just stand there like an idiot, pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. I made my decision then. I needed answers. I walked back to them, my steps steady but my heart pounding in my chest. Kara didn't see me coming. She was too wrapped up in whatever conversation she was having with Richard. Without thinking, I stepped in between them, my voice coming out colder than I intended. "Kara," I said sharply, "can we talk for a second?" Her eyes widened slightly, but she quickly masked the surprise with a smile. "Nathan, you're making a scene," she whispered, clearly trying to diffuse the situation. But I wasn't going to back down. "No, Kara, I'm not making a scene. I'm trying to figure out why you've been acting like this." Richard stepped back slightly, his expression unreadable. He didn't say a word, but the way he looked at me said it all. He wasn't threatened by me. He was amused. It was like he knew something I didn't, like this whole thing was just a game to him. Kara glanced at him and then back at me. The smile on her face was gone now, replaced by something more guarded. "Nathan, don't do this here. Not now." But I wasn't going to let her off that easy. "No, Kara. I need to know what's going on between you and him," I said, my voice rising just enough for a few people nearby to hear. Kara's face turned pale, and for a split second, I saw something flash in her eyes. Guilt? Fear? It was gone too quickly for me to know for sure, but it was enough to make me question everything I had thought about our relationship. Richard cleared his throat, breaking the tension. Nathan, this really isn't the time or the place. We're just having a good time. Are you? I asked, turning to face him directly. Because it sure doesn't look like it. For the first time that night, Richard's expression faltered. He looked at Kara for a moment, then back at me, sizing me up like I was a problem to be dealt with. Let's just get this over with, he said, his voice now tinged with something darker, something that didn't match the friendly exterior he had been putting on all evening. Kara shifted uncomfortably next to him. Nathan, she said softly, I don't know what you think you're seeing, but this isn't what you think it is. But I wasn't convinced. I wasn't buying her words anymore. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just a simple misunderstanding. Something had been building between them for a long time. Something I had missed. Something I couldn't ignore anymore. And as I stood there, staring at them both, I made a vow to myself. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. Not now. Not ever. The tension in the air was suffocating. Kara, standing beside Richard, was visibly uncomfortable now. It was like a mask had slipped from her face, and for the first time in months, I saw a hint of the person I used to know. The woman I married. The one who smiled at me like she truly loved me. But that woman seemed so far away now, replaced by someone who seemed almost unfamiliar. Richard, on the other hand, wore a smug grin that made my blood boil. He didn't flinch when I confronted him. If anything, he seemed almost pleased by it. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. What is this, Kara? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. What's really going on between you and him? Kara looked down at her shoes, avoiding eye contact. That was all the confirmation I needed. She wasn't looking at me because she didn't have the courage to face what she had done. I could feel my anger rise, but I tried to stay calm. I had to. The last thing I wanted was to make a scene. Nathan, please, Kara said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I never meant for it to go this far. Never meant for it to go this far. The words hit me like a slap. Of course, she didn't mean for it to go this far. Nobody ever does, do they? But it had. And now I was standing here, watching her with Richard like she hadn't been married to me for 5 years. Like our life together had never mattered. Richard shifted, his posture stiffening slightly, as if he could sense the shift in the air. His smirk was still there, though. He wasn't afraid of me, that much was clear. He wasn't intimidated by my presence, by my confrontation. It was like he knew he had already won. Look, man, Richard began, his tone dripping with arrogance. I think it's clear what's going on here. You've been busy with your own stuff, right? And Kara, well, she needed someone to talk to. Someone who gets her. The words hung in the air like a foul stench. Someone who gets her? I repeated, barely able to hold back the fury bubbling up inside. You think this is about her needing someone to talk to? You're using her, Richard. Kara flinched, and that one small gesture told me everything I needed to know. She was still protecting him, still unwilling to come clean. It hurt more than I expected. My wife, the woman I had trusted with everything, was standing there, not defending me, but defending him. I'm not using anyone, Richard retorted, his voice now cold, calculated. But if you want to play the jealous husband, then go ahead. But don't pretend you don't know what's been going on. You're not blind, Nathan. His words stung, cutting through my chest like a knife. He was right in a way. I wasn't blind. I had seen the signs. The late nights, the strange messages, the way Kara's attention was divided. But the idea of them actually crossing a line, of her choosing him over me, was something I had never imagined. Kara finally looked at me, her eyes pleading. Nathan, please. You don't understand. It's not what you think. It was then that I realized something. She wasn't just asking for forgiveness. She was trying to justify it, to explain why she had chosen him. And that was the moment I knew I had to walk away. I had to find out the truth for myself, no matter how much it hurt. Don't try to explain it, Kara, I said, my voice low and controlled. I'm done listening to the excuses. I turned away from them, walking out of the ballroom with every step feeling like a weight lifting from my shoulders. My mind was spinning. How had I let it get this far? How had I not seen the signs sooner? I had let myself believe in something that wasn't real. I had allowed myself to live in a fantasy, thinking Kara was the woman I had married. But now I saw who she really was. And it wasn't the woman I thought I knew. As I left the building, The cold air hit my face like a slap, but I didn't care. The reality of the situation was finally settling in. I wasn't just angry, I was heartbroken. Everything I thought I knew about my marriage, about my life, was crashing down around me. I got into my car and drove off without a destination in mind. I just needed to get away, to clear my head. I needed to figure out what to do next. What did I even do now? Confront her again? Demand the truth from Richard? Or was it already too late? I thought about calling her, but I didn't. What was there left to say? She had already made her choice. And it wasn't me. It wasn't until I found myself parked at a diner, staring out the window at the empty street, that I finally allowed myself to feel the weight of everything. The hurt, the confusion, the anger. It all rushed over me in waves. And for the first time in months, I let myself cry. I never thought it would end like this. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting alone, watching my marriage fall apart. The next few days were a blur of confusion and anger. Every time I saw Kara, I wanted to scream. But I didn't. I just couldn't bring myself to confront her again. Not yet. Not until I had the answers I needed. I needed time to process what I had seen, what I had heard, and most of all, what I had ignored for so long. But the truth is, I didn't know where to start. Where did you even begin when everything you thought you knew about your life was a lie? I went back to work the next morning, trying to bury myself in the monotony of everyday tasks. It was easier that way. At least it was something I could control. But as the hours passed, I realized I couldn't escape it. I couldn't escape the thought that Richard was still out there, still with her. I had no idea what had happened between them, but I was determined to find out. I knew Kara better than anyone. I knew how she thought, how she worked. If I could just get her to talk, to admit it, maybe I could understand why it had to be him and not me. But every time I thought about asking her again, every time I imagined confronting her once more, I felt a weight in my chest that I couldn't ignore. She hadn't called or texted after that night, and I wasn't sure if I was relieved or hurt by it. I knew she was trying to avoid me, and I didn't blame her. I had seen the guilt in her eyes when I confronted her. It was the same guilt I felt when I saw the truth of what was happening. She wasn't the woman I thought I married. She wasn't the woman I had spent years building a life with. She had changed, and I wasn't sure if I could ever go back to that place with her. But then, something unexpected happened. It was around midnight when my phone buzzed on the table. I almost didn't look at it, but something told me I had to. I was used to seeing Kara's name pop up, but this time it wasn't a message or a missed call. It was a video. I stared at the screen for a moment, confused. It was from an unknown number. A part of me wanted to ignore it, but curiosity got the best of me. I tapped the screen and watched the video unfold before my eyes. What I saw made my blood run cold. It was a video of Kara and Richard sitting together at what looked like a private dinner. It was intimate, almost too intimate. They were laughing and joking, but the way they were looking at each other, the way Richard was leaning in, his hand casually resting on her leg, it wasn't just friendly. It was more, much more. And it wasn't just the way they were interacting. It was the way Kara was reacting to him. There was a certain spark in her eyes, a level of comfort I hadn't seen in a long time. She wasn't the woman I knew anymore. She was someone else, someone who had already made her choice. The video ended abruptly, and for a moment, I sat there in stunned silence. My heart was racing. I could feel the anger building up inside me again, but this time, it wasn't just anger. It was betrayal, and it was cutting deeper than I ever thought possible. The video had been sent to me by someone I didn't know. There was no name attached, no explanation. Just a message at the top. You're not the only one who's been watching. I didn't know what to do with this. Should I confront Kara with it? Should I go straight to Richard and demand answers? Was this even real? Maybe it was edited. Maybe someone was trying to stir up trouble. But as I watched the video again, the doubt started to fade away. It was real. Every look, every touch, every laugh, it was real. And it was undeniable. I put my phone down and ran my hands through my hair, trying to process everything. It felt like the world had been flipped upside down. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think straight. My mind was racing with a million thoughts, and none of them made sense. And then, as if the universe had decided to add one more twist to my already shattered life, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Kara. "Nathan, we need to talk. Please, can you meet me at the park?" I stared at the message for a long time, my mind refusing to process what it was asking. What could she possibly want to talk about? After everything that had happened, after everything I had seen, what was left to say? But then, I thought about the video. Maybe this was her chance to explain herself, to tell me the truth. I grabbed my keys and left without thinking. I didn't even know what I was expecting. I didn't know what kind of explanation could make all of this make sense. But I went anyway. I had to know. I had to hear it from her, even if it was the last thing I ever wanted to hear. The park was empty when I arrived. The night was cool. The only sounds were the distant hum of traffic and the rustling of leaves in the wind. I saw her sitting on a bench near the fountain, her back to me. She didn't hear me approach. For a moment, I just stood there, watching her. It felt like a lifetime had passed since we were happy. Since we were us. I didn't know what had changed, but I was certain of one thing. Nothing would ever be the same again. She turned as I approached, her face pale, her eyes red as if she had been crying. She didn't say anything at first. She just looked at me, waiting for me to speak. Kara, I started, but my voice caught in my throat. She took a deep breath. Nathan, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to explain this. I never meant for it to go this far, but I can't keep lying to you. I could see the tears welling up in her eyes, but I wasn't sure if they were real anymore. How long, Kara? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. How long has this been going on? She looked down at her hands, unable to meet my gaze. It started a few months ago, she said quietly. I didn't mean for it to happen. But Richard, he understood me in a way you didn't anymore. I never wanted to hurt you, but I didn't know how to stop it. I could feel my heart shattering with every word she said. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the realization that she had already made her choice. That I had been too blind, too naive to see it. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my composure. And what now, Kara? What happens now? She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. I don't know, but I can't lie to you anymore. I need to figure out what I want, and I need you to understand that this was never about you not being enough. It's just complicated. I shook my head, the anger boiling over once again. It's not complicated, Kara. It's simple. You chose him. The cool night air seemed to freeze everything around us as we stood there, facing each other under the dim light of the street lamp. I could hear my pulse in my ears, loud and erratic, the only sound between us. Kara's face was streaked with tears, her hands shaking as she wiped her eyes, but none of it seemed real anymore. None of it made sense. Why him? I asked again, my voice hoarse, barely able to hide the anger that was building inside me. What did he give you that I couldn't? Kara looked away for a moment, her lips trembling, as if the words she was about to speak might break something inside her too. It's not about what he gave me, Nathan, she said quietly. It's about what I couldn't find with you anymore. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. It wasn't the first time someone had told me they felt like they'd lost something in a relationship, but hearing those words from her, from the woman I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with, shattered me. It was like she had taken everything we had built together and thrown it in my face. What do you mean, you couldn't find it with me? I demanded, stepping closer to her. My hands were clenched into fists, but I didn't care. I needed to understand, needed to know why this was happening. She looked down, the shame obvious on her face. Nathan, we've been drifting for months, even before Richard. I've been trying to fill a hole inside me that I didn't even know existed. And when I met Richard, it was like he could see me, really see me, in a way you couldn't. I stepped back, letting the words sink in. She had said it. She had admitted it. This wasn't just some misunderstanding or an accident. She had chosen him. Not once, not twice, but over and over again. I wasn't enough for you, Kara, I said through clenched teeth, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. But Richard was? Kara flinched as if my words physically hurt her. It's not like that, she whispered, her voice cracking. I never wanted to hurt you, Nathan. You were always there for me, always trying. But I couldn't see myself with you anymore. I couldn't see our future. And with him, I don't know. It felt different. I wanted to scream, to yell at her, to demand she take it all back, but instead, I stood there, paralyzed by the reality of it. She had already made her choice, and no amount of shouting or pleading could change it. Richard had taken the place I once held, and now there was nothing left for me to hold on to. You're telling me that you didn't want to hurt me, and yet here we are, I said, the bitterness creeping into my voice. I trusted you, Kara. I believed in us. And now I'm standing here, watching you justify it like it's nothing. Kara's shoulders shook, and she reached for me, but I stepped back, unable to let her touch me. I didn't want her comfort. I didn't want her apologies. I just wanted the truth, and here it was, laid bare before me. I never meant to hurt you, Nathan, she said again, her voice barely above a whisper. But I've hurt you anyway, and I can't take that back. Her words hung in the air like a weight I couldn't shake. I felt a wave of frustration rise within me. But then I realized something. I had spent so much of my life trying to hold on to something that wasn't real anymore. I had held on to her, to our marriage, thinking that it would be enough, thinking that if I tried harder, things would get better. But they hadn't. She hadn't. I'm done, Kara, I said, the words falling from my lips like a final judgment. I don't know who you are anymore, but I'm not going to keep pretending this is okay. You've already made your choice, and I'm not part of it. I turned to leave, but her voice stopped me. Nathan, please don't go. Let's talk this through. I didn't stop. I couldn't. Not after everything she had said. Not after everything I had seen. I don't need to talk anymore, I said over my shoulder, my heart pounding in my chest. I need to move on. I walked away from her then, from the woman I had loved, from the life we had built together. I didn't look back. Not once. I drove home in silence, the city lights blurring as I passed, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to feel everything I had been holding in. The rage, the hurt, the confusion, it all poured out of me like a flood. I had been blind. I had been too trusting, too willing to ignore the signs. But now it was too late. I walked into the house, the emptiness settling over me like a heavy fog. I looked around at the pictures on the walls, the mementos of a life that no longer existed. The house felt different now, like it was no longer mine. And I realized something. I wasn't just losing Kara. I was losing the person I had been when I was with her. I had to rebuild, but I didn't know how. I sat down on the couch, staring at the wall, thinking about what I had to do next. Part of me wanted to call her again, to beg for the answers I hadn't gotten, to beg for the love that she had already given away. But deep down, I knew better. I knew that no matter what happened next, nothing would ever be the same again. I had to let her go, but letting her go was the hardest part. The next few days were a haze of numbness. It was like I was moving through life in a fog, doing what I had to do, but not truly feeling any of it. Work was unbearable. I couldn't focus on anything. I found myself staring at my phone, wondering if Kara would reach out, if she would explain herself, if somehow this mess could be fixed. But the calls and texts never came. The silence from her was deafening. And with every passing day, the weight of the reality I was facing crushed me harder. I had always thought that when a relationship ended, it would be a clean break, a moment of finality. But it wasn't like that at all. It was messy, painful, and filled with 1,000 unanswered questions. I kept replaying everything in my mind, every smile, every touch, every little moment I had missed, thinking they were innocent. I kept asking myself, when did I stop being enough? When did I become the one who wasn't worth fighting for? Then, one evening, while I was sitting in the kitchen with a glass of whiskey in hand, I saw something that caught my attention. It was an email, an invitation to an event, a gala of some sort, sent from a company I didn't recognize. At first, I thought it was spam, just some marketing junk, but something told me to open it. My hand trembled slightly as I clicked the link. The event was being held at the same venue where I had seen Kara and Richard together. The venue wasn't exactly somewhere you just bump into people. It was exclusive. Then, my eyes locked onto the details of the event, the list of attendees. And there it was. Richard's name, front and center, along with several other prominent people from Kara's company, many of whom I had never met, but all of whom seemed to be in the same circles that she had recently started traveling in. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Was she really going to keep this up? I had a decision to make. I could keep pretending I didn't know what was going on, let the silence continue, let Kara and Richard live their little secret lives in peace. Or I could do something about it. I could stop letting this weight sit on my chest, threatening to break me with every passing day. I chose to do something about it. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I wasn't going to spend another day hiding from the truth. I was going to find the answers I needed, even if it meant confronting the very thing that had torn my world apart. The gala was that evening, and I wasn't about to let it go without a fight. I didn't care if I was being dramatic or if it made me look desperate. I was going, and I was going to see it with my own eyes. When I arrived at the venue, I could feel the nerves building in my stomach. This wasn't some casual confrontation. This wasn't just about Richard or Kara. This was about me taking control of my life again, about confronting the person who had betrayed me and demanding the truth. I stood at the entrance of the event, surveying the crowd, and there she was. Kara, in a gorgeous dress that made her look completely untouchable. Her hair was styled perfectly, her makeup flawless, and yet there was a coldness to her now that made my stomach churn. She wasn't the same person I had married. She wasn't even the same person I had just spoken to a few days ago. This woman before me was a stranger, someone who had already made a life for herself without me in it. But I wasn't going to back down. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I walked toward her, my heart racing, the adrenaline pumping through my veins. She looked up as I approached, her eyes widening in shock. She didn't say anything, but the brief moment of hesitation in her expression told me everything I needed to know. "You didn't think I'd find out, did you?" I said, my voice steady, but my heart hammering in my chest. I couldn't stop the words from coming out. The anger, the hurt, the betrayal. It was all spilling out now, and I couldn't hold it back anymore. "You thought I'd just sit back and let you and Richard keep playing your little games?" Kara opened her mouth to speak, but the words didn't come. She looked around, as if searching for an escape, but I wasn't going to let her avoid this conversation. "You've been lying to me, Kara," I continued, my voice getting louder, more intense. "You've been lying to me for months, and I've been a fool. I thought we had something real. I thought I was the one you wanted." Kara's face paled, her lips trembling. "Nathan, please. This isn't the time or the place." "No," I interrupted, cutting her off. "No more excuses. This is exactly the time and the place. You've made your choice, Kara, and now I'm done pretending like I'm just going to let it slide. You're here with him, aren't you?" I pointed across the room, where Richard stood with a glass of wine in his hand, casually talking to some of the guests. His eyes flickered over to us, and for a second, I saw that familiar smug grin on his face. He didn't even have the decency to look guilty. It was like he was daring me to do something. Kara's gaze followed mine, but she quickly turned her eyes back to the floor. "Please, Nathan. I didn't want you to find out this way. I was going to tell you, but I didn't know how." Tell me." I scoffed. "You didn't want me to find out, but here you are, living this lie right in front of me. You think that's how this works, Kara? You think I'll just understand?" The anger was bubbling over now, and I could see Kara shrinking, the guilt and shame finally visible on her face. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for me to see her regret. She had already crossed a line, and no amount of tears or apologies would fix it. "You made your choice," I said, taking a step back, the realization hitting me with full force. "And now I'm going to make mine. This is over, Kara." Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked away, my heart still racing. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. She wasn't the woman I thought she was, and I wasn't the man who would stay by her side anymore. The drive home was a blur. I wasn't thinking about anything in particular, but everything was crashing down around me. The lights from the passing cars blurred together, and the weight of everything that had happened pressed down on me like a heavy fog. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles were white. Every time I thought about Kara, about Richard, about what they'd done, I felt like I couldn't breathe. The betrayal wasn't just a punch to the gut. It was suffocating. When I got home, I didn't know what to do with myself. The house felt hollow, empty in a way I couldn't explain. The memories, the photos, everything we had shared, it all seemed meaningless now. I went into the living room, plopped down on the couch, and stared at the wall. For the first time in a long while, I felt completely and utterly lost. I hadn't heard from Kara since that night at the event. The silence between us was deafening. She had sent a few texts, but I had ignored them all. What could she possibly say to fix this? What could she say that would make this pain go away? I didn't know if I was angry, heartbroken, or just numb. I felt like a shell of the person I used to be. I used to be confident, certain of my life and my choices. But now I was just an empty room, haunted by the ghost of the life I thought I had. I stared at my phone, weighing the possibility of answering her. I could feel the buzz of her messages coming through, one after another, but I didn't open a single one. What was there to say? There were no more words that would make this right. No more promises that could undo what had been done. Every time I thought about them together, it made my chest tighten in a way I couldn't explain. I had to let go. I had to walk away from my own sanity, even if the pain was unbearable. As the days passed, I became more and more reclusive. I couldn't bring myself to go to work. I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror. I felt like I had been hollowed out from the inside. My friends tried to reach out, but I pushed them away. I didn't want their pity, didn't want their advice. All I wanted was silence, space to think, space to heal. But that wasn't going to happen. Not now. One evening, as I was sitting in the kitchen, going through the motions of a life I no longer recognized, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I didn't want to answer. Part of me thought it could be Kara, and I didn't know if I was ready for that conversation yet. But something, a small, nagging voice in the back of my mind, urged me to pick up. I pressed the green button, holding the phone to my ear. Nathan. It wasn't Kara's voice. I froze. It was Richard. My heart started racing. What the hell do you want? He was calm, too calm, like he had everything figured out while I was sitting here, unraveling. I think we need to talk, Richard said, his voice smooth. It's about Kara. I scoffed, the bitterness creeping into my voice. What's there to talk about? You've got what you wanted, haven't you? There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and for a second, I wondered if he was going to hang up. But instead, he spoke again, quieter this time. I'm not here to fight with you, Nathan. I'm here to be honest with you, for once. I didn't call to rub anything in your face. I called because you need to hear the truth. All of it. I could feel my jaw clenching. What truth? That you've been sleeping with my wife behind my back. I don't need to hear any more lies, Richard. He sighed, a long, drawn-out sigh that made me want to reach through the phone and strangle him. It's not about lies, Nathan. This whole thing, it's complicated. But I'm not the villain here. Not the way you think. Kara needs help, and maybe, just maybe, you're not the person who can give it to her. I was on the verge of hanging up, but something in his words made me stop. What are you talking about? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. What help does she need? Richard's voice lowered, almost sounding like he was confiding in me. Kara's been struggling with herself for a while now. I'm not excusing what's happened, but she's been lost. The way she's been behaving, the way she's pushed you away, it's not about you. It's about her. And I think you deserve to know that before you walk away completely. For a moment, I just stood there, letting his words sink in. I couldn't tell if he was trying to manipulate me or if there was some truth to what he was saying. But part of me wanted to believe it. Part of me wanted to believe that Kara wasn't completely to blame. That maybe, just maybe, there was something deeper going on that I couldn't see. But I wasn't ready to forgive. Not yet. Not when the wound was still so fresh. I don't need your explanation, Richard, I said, my voice shaking. I don't need your pity or your justification. I'm done. I hung up before he could say anything else, my fingers trembling as I dropped the phone on the counter. My heart was beating faster now, the adrenaline coursing through me as I tried to make sense of what had just happened. Richard had spoken about Kara like she was a lost cause, like she was someone I couldn't fix. And maybe he was right. Maybe I couldn't fix her. But I wasn't ready to accept that. Not yet. The truth was, I didn't know if I could walk away from her. I didn't know if I could let go of everything we had built, even if it was built on lies. But I also knew one thing. I couldn't keep living in this limbo, caught between holding on and letting go. It was time to make a choice. And this time, it had to be mine. It's strange how something as painful as betrayal can lead you to clarity. For days, I was lost in the confusion of everything. The anger, the heartbreak, the feeling that my world had been ripped apart. But the moment I hung up the phone with Richard, something shifted. I realized that no matter how much I wanted to fight for Kara, I couldn't keep fighting alone. I couldn't keep waiting for her to come back to me, for her to fix what had broken. That night, after everything had settled and the silence of my home pressed in on me again, I sat on the edge of the couch, letting the stillness surround me. I had been so consumed by everything that had happened that I had forgotten one important thing. I had to take care of myself. I had spent so much time trying to figure out what went wrong, looking for answers in the wrong places, and blaming myself. But it was time to stop. It was time to heal. To focus on me, for once. I spent the next few weeks focusing on rediscovering myself. I picked up hobbies I had abandoned, like running and reading. I reached out to friends I hadn't spoken to in ages. And slowly but surely, the weight of the past started to lift. I wasn't okay, not completely, but I was better. I could breathe again. I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. One evening, as I was leaving the gym, I received a message. It was from Kara. Nathan, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm working on myself. I've been seeing a therapist, and I'm trying to figure out who I really am. I never meant to hurt you. I know I don't have the right to ask this, but I hope we can talk when you're ready." I stared at the message for a while, letting the words sink in. Part of me wanted to run away from it all, to pretend like nothing had happened. But I knew that wasn't the answer. I had already come so far in my healing. The last thing I wanted was to fall back into old habits, into that toxic cycle of hope and pain. But something inside me told me to take a breath, to give her the benefit of the doubt. It wasn't for her, it was for me. I couldn't keep carrying around the anger. I had to let it go. I picked up my phone and replied, "Let's meet. But I need to do this for me. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I'm willing to listen." The next week, we met at a small cafe. Kara looked different. She was still the same woman, but there was something about her that had shifted. She was quieter, more reserved. But I could see the pain in her eyes, the way she had finally come to terms with what she had done. We talked for hours. About everything. About the mistakes we had both made. About the things I had missed. The things she had hidden from me. It wasn't a magical conversation that fixed everything, but it was a start. For the first time in a long time, I felt like we were both on the same page, both willing to move forward, even if that meant taking things one step at a time. As we said goodbye that evening, I didn't feel like we had fixed everything, but I did feel like I had reclaimed my peace. I had forgiven her, not for her sake, but for mine. I knew I wasn't ready to jump back into a relationship with her, but I had let go of the anger. And that was enough. The road ahead wasn't clear, and it wouldn't be easy. But I was no longer the person I was before this all happened. I had grown. I had learned. I had found my own strength, my own resilience. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited about the future. As I walked away from that cafe, I felt a sense of closure. Not the kind of closure that comes with finality, but the kind that comes from knowing that I had done everything I could, that I had fought for myself. And that, no matter what happened next, I would be okay. Because in the end, it wasn't about holding on to the past. It was about letting go, moving forward, and finding the person I was meant to be all along.